Okay. There's there's a question that I know a lot of people have been wondering for a long time. You know, how did this come into existence? How was this created? And I know how the pogo stick was made, And I think I'm gonna tell you guys that story. So it all started like what, 13 years ago, when it's kind of when the fat people, like, they first started existing. Like, there were no fat people uh 14 years ago, 13 years ago. There's just a larger amount, a large amount of fat people just started existing. And some of them, they were really lazy. And but here's the thing. They could walk, but they didn't want to. The fat people, you see, back then, fatness meant you were better than someone because we didn't have as much of a understanding of the human body as we have now. But basically, fat was sought after. Like, everyone wanted fat, and only the cool people have it. And it was kind of like everyone was trying to get fat. They were eating as much as they could, but no, people just couldn't get fat. They didn't have it in them. They weren't strong enough. They weren't cool enough to become fat. And and basically this guy, he was like, what if the fat people are actually the bad people? What if we're those skinny people are the good people? And he wanted to prove this hypothesis. So he started experimenting with all these items. This man also created the balloon because of this, but he created the balloon and he was like, it does represent the fat man's stomach, but it's not quite what he was looking for. So he started experimenting with stuff, and he finally figured out this thing called the pogo stick. He was like, fat people, they can't use the pogo stick. And he was laughing. He was jumping really high and around all the fat people. And because we're so fat and we're not fast and we can't use the pogo stick, we couldn't catch him. He was going like 20 feet in the air. Back then, pogo sticks were like a lot better than they were now. Like, you could go like as high as a house if you want, but it was kind of like a double-edged sword. You could potentially fall off and maybe like bruise a bone or something if you were like 80 feet high. But that's not important. He started jumping around and laughing at the fat man, but then the fat man, he evolved. The next year, there were fat people, but they were a different kind of fat. There were fat people that were they their stomachs were really wide, but their legs, they were very skinny, and they could fit on the pogo stick. And the man who invented the pogo stick, he was surprised. He could not expected this. So he was going crazy. He was like, how do I make it so the pogo stick, the fat man, even with this skinny, you can't ride it. And the pogo stick back in these days, it wasn't like the pogo stick we know now. It was like anyone could do it. You just couldn't be fat to do it. So the fat people with skinny legs could do it. But basically, he was like, okay, then fat people too can play at this game. And then the skinny people started evolving. Their legs, they got super thick, and he was just like, oh my. And he made a new pogo stick that only the people with really thick legs could ride. And that means fat people couldn't ride them anymore. And then yeah, fat people couldn't ride the pogo stick, but then some guy was like, why can't we all just share? And then that guy was immediately killed. But his son lived, but we don't know much about his son. And then the the eventually this genius among the fat community was born. He was like, you know what? I'm gonna create a pogo stick that fat people can use, that everyone can use actually. But he mainly only wanted fat people to be using the pogo stick. So yeah, he created it, and that's what we know now as the Pogo Stick Supreme Galactic Stick. It yeah, it takes balance, it takes skill, it doesn't just take weight. And that was like one of the biggest. It's like one of the biggest things that's ever happened in the world actually. You know, so many people were affected by this pogo stick. The people that didn't get to evolve, the skinny and the fat people that never got to evolve, they weren't able to use it. They were able to use it, I mean, and they were happy. The whole world was happy. And and then we found out that everyone can actually be fat, you know, and then all the skinny people, they started becoming fat, and and then the world kind of just changed a little, and the fat and skinny wars were over, and these days being fat is looked down upon, but I think being fat is better than being skinny, because when you're fat, like, you can, there's a lot of stuff you can do. Like, I'll make another video later, like, going into detail, but because that's like a 20-minute conversation. But yeah, the pogo stick was actually invented as a weapon to use against the fat man. That's what it was, and most people don't know that, and I just wanted to let everyone know. And by the way, the pogo stick actually ended World War II. Um, Most people don't know about that as well. Basically, what happened was this one of Germany's men dropped a nuke, and they were getting ready to explode the world. But then this guy, he jumps up on a pogo stick, does like a 360, and then he does like a 180, and then he has it so like he's bounced off the nuke, and he sent the nuke flying all the way into space, and then the war was over, and the pogo stick actually saved the world. So props to the pogo stick and the skinny man for creating that. Fat people, we don't got that one on you. Well, thanks for watching, everyone.